My parents took me to a doctor to prove I was pure. I've been staring at this blank screen for almost an hour now, trying to decide how much of the truth I can actually admit. I created this account on a public computer so it wouldn't be linked to me. I turned off the camera in my apartment, covered the tiny green light on my laptop with a piece of tape, even closed the curtains even though I am on the fifth floor and no one can see in. Still, my hands are shaking. I don't know if that is fear, shame, or just the muscle memory of years spent trying not to disappoint. In my family, the word pure wasn't just a compliment. It was a status, a requirement, a silent contract that I never agreed to but was born into anyway. And the day my parents took me to a doctor to prove it, something in me cracked so deeply that I don't think it ever fully healed. I am 21 now, I live alone, I pay my own bills, technically I am free, but that day still follows me like a shadow stitched into the back of my mind. I was 19 when it happened. In my culture, it is normal for parents to be involved in their children as slaves, especially their daughters. You don't really belong to yourself until after you're married, and even then, it's debatable. My parents never said that out loud, but they didn't have to. It lived in their rules, their expectations, their watching, and my father, just silence. My mother had always been obsessed with appearances, how we looked at family gatherings, how quiet I was, how modest I dressed, how carefully I walked, sat, laughed. Every movement was something that could be judged, which meant it could be controlled. People see everything, she used to tell me, even when you think they are not looking. I grew up thinking the world was just one big courtroom, and I was always on trial. No boyfriend, no late nights, no parties, no inappropriate friends. Every text on my phone was examined, every school project questioned. Even when I went to college, even when I started working part-time, even when I technically turned into an adult, I was still being monitored. But it wasn't until my engagement was announced that things got different. That's when the word pure started to appear more often. It wasn't said like something beautiful. It was said like a warning. I remember the first time my mother looked me in the eyes and said it in that voice. "You haven't done anything shameful, have you?" It caught me off guard. I actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. That turned out to be a mistake. Don't laugh when I am serious, she snapped. This is your future. This is our honor. I didn't know how to respond to that. I just shrugged and told her no, that I was focused on school, on work, on being a good daughter. Her eyes searched my face the way a detective studies a suspect, like she was waiting for guilt to float to the surface. After that conversation, everything shifted. I noticed the way she watched me more closely, how often she would accidentally walk into my room, how she would inspect the laundry before putting it away, how she started going through my bag and my phone more often, not even trying to hide it anymore. And then one night, after dinner, she and my father asked me to sit in the living room. That is how I knew something bad was coming. The living room was only used for guests or serious conversations. The couch felt stiff. The air felt heavy. My father sat across from me, his arms crossed. My mother beside him, perfectly straight, her face unreadable. "We love you," she started. "That is always the beginning of a nightmare. But love is not enough. We must also protect your future," she continued. I asked them what they meant. My voice was calm on the outside, but inside my heart was slamming itself against my ribs. My father spoke for the first time, his voice low and firm. "With the marriage coming soon, things need to be confirmed." "Confirmed," I repeated, confused. My mother nodded once. "We are taking you to see a doctor tomorrow morning." I didn't understand. Not at first. All sorts of innocent possibilities went through my head. A regular checkup, blood work, maybe something about vaccines. And then she added the words that made the floor seem to tilt beneath me. "A test, to confirm your purity." I swear the world went quiet in that exact moment, like the air itself stopped moving. "You can to be serious," I said, almost laughing again, but my voice sounded thin, panicked. "It is necessary," my father said. "Many families do this. It is private. It is quick. It is done for your own good." "For my own good?" I repeated. The phrase tasted sour. My mother leaned closer. "If you have nothing to hide, then you should not be afraid." Those words are still stuck in my head. They've been replayed in my mind for 2 years straight. If you have nothing to hide, you should not be afraid. But the thing is, even if you're innocent, being treated like you're guilty changes something in you. It takes the ground you stand on and makes it feel like thin ice. I tried to argue. I told them I was an adult. I said that it was humiliating, that it was invasive, that it felt wrong. Every word I said just seemed to make them more convinced that I was hiding something. By the end of the conversation, it wasn't a choice. It was a command. They told me what time to wake up, what to wear, and that I would not be discussing this with anyone. Not my friends, not my fiancé, not even my cousins. "This stays in this family," my mother warned. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I stared at my ceiling, counting every tiny crack in the paint. My body felt like it didn't belong to me. My skin felt too tight, like I wanted to crawl out of it and leave it behind on the floor. I remember thinking about running, packing a bag, just disappearing into the night, but then I pictured their faces, the shouting, the shame, the messages to relatives, the way my name would be dragged through whispers. Fear is a powerful leash. The morning came too fast. My mother stood at my door before the sun was fully up. "Get dressed," she said. No comfort, no gentleness, no motherly warmth, just cold determination. The drive to the clinic was silent. No music, no small talk, just the sound of the tires on the road and my heartbeat exploding in my ears. It was a small private building on the edge of town. No sign out front except a name in faded gold letters, the kind of place that survives on secrets. My mother filled out the forms for me. "Reason for visit?" the receptionist asked casually. My mother didn't even lower her voice. "Verification." I felt my entire body go stiff. The receptionist didn't look surprised. That somehow made it worse. When my name was called, my legs actually hesitated, like they didn't want to carry me any farther. My parents stood up too. "They cannot come in with me," the nurse said gently but firmly. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but my father stopped her with a single look. "Do as you were told," he said to me, not unkindly, but like I was a child again. As I followed the nurse down the narrow hallway, I had one overwhelming thought. This is the last moment where my life is still mine. And then the door behind me closed. The room didn't look like a place where truth should be decided. That was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't comforting. It wasn't warm. There were no soft colors, no welcoming posters on the wall. Everything was white, blank, sterile, like the air had been stripped of emotion. Even the light from the ceiling felt cold, almost blue, cutting through me instead of surrounding me. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt much too final. The nurse gestured for me to sit on the edge of the bed. I did, but my body barely registered the movement. It was like my brain had already started to detach from what was happening, like it was floating somewhere above, watching a stranger wearing my face. "This one to take long," the nurse said too casually. I didn't answer. My throat had locked up. I stared at the tiled floor, at a thin crack that zigzagged between the squares. I clung to it like an anchor. If I focused hard enough, I told myself, maybe I could dissolve into that crack. Maybe I could disappear into it and never come back. Then the doctor entered. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't smile. He barely even looked at my face, just glanced at the chart in his hands like I was one more task on a long list. "Your parents requested confirmation," he said. Not asked. Requested. Confirmation. I hated that word. The nurse stepped out of the room, leaving just me and him and the unbearable silence that expanded between us. I suddenly became painfully aware of every inch of my skin, of my own breathing, of how fast my heart was going. I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream that I had changed my mind, that this was wrong, that it wasn't their right to sign my body away like a document, but the words sank before they could reach the surface. Fear turned me mute. "Lie back," he instructed. I remember the texture of the paper on the bed when I laid down. It crinkled loudly, accusingly, like it wanted to tell the whole world what was happening. I stared straight up at the ceiling and tried to think of something else. Anything else. Count the tiles. Count the dots. Pretend you were somewhere far away. Instead, my mind dragged me into every warning, every rumor, every whispered story I'd heard growing up about girls who failed, girls who had been ruined, girls who brought shame to their families. I imagined my mother's face if that word appeared on any report ruined. For a moment, I wondered if it would be easier to simply stop breathing, just go numb and let the world fade out. At some point, it was over. I don't remember the details, only the emptiness afterwards, the strange absence of feeling, like someone had scooped out the core of me with a frozen spoon. "You may sit up," he said, already turning away, already done with me. That was it. No comfort, no acknowledgement of what had just been taken from me, just a quiet, clinical ending. A piece of paper printed from a machine would now decide my worth. When I left the room, the nurse avoided my eyes. That small detail hurt more than anything else. In the waiting area, my parents stood up immediately. My mother searched my face, her fingers gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Well?" she asked. I shook my head slowly. "He didn't say anything to me." "That is fine," she replied quickly. "He'll speak to us." She said it like she was relieved I hadn't been given information about my own body, like that was correct, like that was normal. I sat in a chair across the room while they went into a private office with the doctor. The door shut, and I watched the handle the entire time, like it might start whispering when they spoke inside. Every second stretched and twisted itself into 10. I imagined him handing her a paper. I imagined the way she would read it. I imagined her expression changing. I imagined the drive home in silence, the phone calls she would make, the relatives that would know, the engagement being canceled, my name never spoken with kindness again. I wondered who I would become if that happened. Would I exist at all? When the door finally opened, my parents came out together. My mother's face was calm again. Too calm, like a storm that had decided to wait. My father wouldn't look at me. "We're going home," she said. That was all. No explanation, no confirmation, no reassurance, just that one sentence. The drive home felt longer than the drive there. The air inside the car was suffocating. Every breath I took was shallow. Terrified, like I was inhaling through a thin straw, I watched my mother's reflection in the rearview mirror. She didn't look angry. She didn't look relieved either. She looked calculating. When we got home, she instructed me to go to my room, like I was a little kid being sent to think about the corner ID stood in. I sat on my bed and waited minutes, then an hour, then longer. My mind started to tear itself apart. Did I pass? Did I fail? What did the paper say? Why wouldn't they tell me? What did my body betray without my permission? That night, there was no conversation of forgiveness or relief. No hugs, no awkward attempt at normalcy, only silence, heavy, unforgiving silence. And that silence told me something horrifying. Whether I had passed or failed didn't matter. What mattered was that they had done it. They had taken something from me that could never be given back. Not by time, not by love, not by distance. My privacy, my safety, my ownership. A few days later, my mother finally brought it up again. "We received confirmation," she said, folding laundry as if she was discussing the weather. "The doctor says there are no indications of shameful behavior." I should have felt relief. I should have felt grateful. I should have felt clean. Instead, I felt like my soul had been stamped with a painful, invisible mark that only I could feel. Because the truth is, something had happened. Maybe not what they were looking for, but something had been broken. From that day on, I started noticing things about myself. How I flinched when someone walked up behind me. How a closed door made my stomach tighten. How I started sleeping in clothes that covered most of my body even though I lived alone. How I avoided mirrors. How showers suddenly felt unsafe instead of relaxing. Something about being seen without consent had changed my relationship with my own skin. And the worst part? They acted like nothing had happened. My engagement continued as planned. Family dinners continued. Smiles returned. Laughter filled the house like it always had. But for me, the world had shifted into something darker. I realized something terrifying. My parents didn't love me as a person. They loved what I represented. And my body? That was just a document they wanted stamped with approval. I started to pull away without them noticing. I stayed out longer. I kept secrets not because I had something to hide, but because something inside me needed to survive somewhere private. And at night, when the apartment was quiet and my thoughts had no place to run anymore, I would replay the sound of the clinic door closing over and over, like it was still happening. And sometimes in the middle of the dark, I would ask myself a question that scared me more than anything else. If this is what love looks like, what does danger feel like? Because I was starting to think I had lived with danger my entire life without... By the time I turned 21, people thought I was doing well. That is probably the worst part. From the outside, my life looked fine, maybe even impressive. I had my own small apartment. I had a decent job. I had cut my hair shorter and learned how to use makeup in a way that made me look less tired than I really was. I smiled in photos when coworkers insisted. I even posted one or two on social media so my relatives would see I was thriving. They didn't know that every time a camera pointed at me, I had the same thought. This is not the person that walked into that clinic. Because whoever she was, she never walked out. People talk about trauma like it as a storm that passes. Something loud, obvious, dramatic. Lightning, thunder, destruction. Mine was quieter, more like mold. It grew in corners no one looked at. It spread behind walls. It lived in little routines, like how I always checked the lock on my front door 3 times, even when I could clearly see it was closed. Like how I would freeze whenever someone casually said, "Don't worry, it's just a routine exam." Like how I avoided words like virgin, pure, innocent in movies or conversations because they all felt like knives wrapped in sugar. I didn't call off the engagement right away. I wish I could say I stood up for myself, slammed my fist on a table, and announced that I refused to marry into a family that quietly approved of what had been done to me. But that is not what happened. I stayed. At first, it was because I didn't know how to leave without burning everything down. Later, I realized I was scared that if I left, my parents would feel justified in what they did. "See," they would say, "we were right to be suspicious. Look how she behaves now." So, I went along with it. I met my fiancé. I smiled. I played the part. He wasn't a bad person. That almost made it worse. He was polite, respectful, ambitious, the kind of man people said I should be grateful for. He'd bring me coffee when we met to talk about wedding plans, ask me about my classes, about my job. He'd tell me I looked tired and then quickly apologize, worried he'd offended me. He didn't know that I lay awake most nights listening for footsteps that would never come. The first time he tried to hold my hand, we were sitting on a park bench. It was late afternoon, the sun low and warm, children playing on the grass nearby. Normal, safe, harmless. His fingers brushed mine. Every muscle in my body clenched so hard it almost hurt. I pulled away without meaning to. It was like my arm belonged to someone else. I'm sorry, I blurted out. He looked confused. You don't have to apologize. Did I do something wrong? No, it's not you. I swallowed the rest of the sentence. I just can't be touched without something inside me bracing for impact. I watched his face as he tried to process my reaction. He smiled a little, that gentle, careful smile. And it's okay. We can go slow. We have time. We have time. The words should have comforted me. Instead, all I heard was a countdown. About 3 months after the clinic visit, my mother brought it up for the last time. We were in the kitchen. She was chopping vegetables. I was drying dishes. It was late. Everyone else had gone to bed. The fluorescent light hummed softly above us. You should be more affectionate with him, she said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. He is a good man. You won't find someone like him again. I stared at the plate in my hand. Trying. Trying isn't tea enough. Men have needs. You will be his wife soon. The plate slipped a little. My fingers almost lost their grip. I thought about telling her right then. I thought about turning to her and saying, I can still feel that room when I close my eyes. I can still hear the paper on that bed when I move at night. I can even stand my own reflection some days, and you want me to be soft and easy and open? Instead, I asked her a question I already knew the answer to. Do you ever feel guilty about what you did? She didn't even pause the knife. What we did saved you, she said calmly. If there had been something to hide, better we find out in private, before the wedding, before the shame. So, my body is just... I struggled to find a word. Evidence to you? She set the knife down and looked at me with this cold, almost pitying expression. You're being dramatic, she said. We did what any good parents would do. A girl's purity is important. It protects her. It protects her future. She picked up the knife again. Chop, chop, chop. And now, she added, we know you are still deserving. That word made me feel sick. Deserving. Like love had been conditional all along, and I had finally seen the contract I never read. The engagement slowly started to rot from the inside. Not because of big fights, but because of all the things I couldn't say. Every time my fiancé held my hand, I stiffened. Every time he complimented me, I wondered if he would still say it if he knew everything. Every time he talked about our future, I felt like he was talking to a copy of me that my parents had carefully engineered. The first real crack came one evening when he asked, very gently, Are you sure you want this? We were sitting in his car. The windows were fogged a little from our breath. It was raining lightly, the sound of it filling the silence between us. What do you mean? I asked. You always look scared, he said. Not of me, I hope, but of something. Whenever we talk about the wedding or get a little closer or even just sit alone together, it's like you disappear inside your head. He was right. I did disappear. Back into that hallway, back under those lights. I am just stressed, I said. It's a big change. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. 2 weeks later, he asked again, more direct this time. Did someone hurt you? I felt my lungs lock. I laughed it off too quickly. No, of course not. Why would you think that? Because you flinch when I reach for you, he said quietly. Because you look like you were bracing for bad news every time you see my mother. Because I hear the way your parents talk about you when they think I'm not listening. Something in me snapped a little. What do they say? I asked. He hesitated. That you are fragile? That you need guidance? That you might make mistakes if they don't watch you carefully? That you emotional. That word, again, used like a flaw, not a human trait. That night I went home and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. I thought about the clinic, about the paper, about their faces when they came out of that room, about how they had guarded that piece of information more tightly than any secret ID ever had, and I realized something. They didn't trust me before the test. They didn't trust me during it. They didn't trust me after it either. They trusted the paper, the doctor, the system that told them their control was justified. I ended the engagement a month later. I didn't tell anyone the real reason. Not him, not his family, not mine. I told them we weren't compatible, that we wanted different things, that it was better to end things now than later. Everyone was angry. His mother cried and asked what she had done wrong. My father went silent in that scary way, the one where his jaw tightens and his eyes go distant. My mother called me ungrateful, unstable, immature. You are throwing away your future over a mood, she said. She didn't understand that I was finally choosing any future that was actually mine. Here's where the actual confession comes in. Because what I've told you so far is the story I've told myself. The narrative where I just a victim who walked away. But that's not entirely true. I did something I've never admitted to anyone. After I moved out, I heard through a cousin that one of our younger relatives, she was 18, was being taken for a checkup. The way they said it made my stomach drop. Too familiar, too rehearsed. I asked which clinic. It was the same one, the same building, same faded gold letters. Something broke loose inside me when I heard that. My cousin S voice was casual, almost excited. It's just routine, she said. You know how families are. They're just being careful. Careful. That word sounded like poison. After that call, I stared at my phone for a long time. My hands were cold. My heartbeat felt like it had moved up into my throat. I had 3 choices. Do nothing. Pretend I never heard. Call my parents and argue. Be ignored. Branded dramatic again, or do something that couldn't be traced back to me. I chose the third option. I made an anonymous report, not just one. I wrote a detailed email to a local women's organization and another to a journalist whose articles I had read online. I explained exactly what had happened to me, dates, process, language used. I explained that it was being framed as routine, that parents were signing off on examinations their adult daughters didn't truly consent to, that the clinic catered to this quietly. I didn't use my name. I didn't use anyone's name, but I gave them the clinic S. I wrote that word I hate so much, a purity. I hit send. And then I sat there in the dark, feeling like I had just dug up a grave and left it open. A few weeks later, it started. A small article at first, then a bigger one, then interviews, activists, lawyers debating legality, people saying, this is cultural, others saying, no, this is abuse. I watched the whole thing unfold like a movie I had once starred in, but no longer recognized myself in. The clinic was suddenly under review. There were whispers of malpractice. The Dr. S name started circulating. My parents were furious. Not at the clinic, at the dirty girls who want to destroy tradition, at Western influence, at rebellious daughters who forget where they come from. They never suspected me. When my cousin S appointment was canceled because of all this drama, my mother called me. This is what happens when people air their shame in public, she snapped. Girls today want attention. They lie. They exaggerate. They ruin good menace reputations. I listened in silence as she ranted. I didn't tell her that one of those girls was me. I didn't tell her that her own daughter had lit the match that started this slow-burning fire. I just said, maybe it is for the best, and let her spiral. We haven't fully recovered from that distance. Sometimes, I think we never will. So, here's my confession, the one I can say out loud anywhere else. I am the reason that clinic is being investigated. I am the reason some families no longer have that service to rely on to police their daughters' bodies. I am the reason some men are angry, some mothers are outraged, some fathers feel their control slipping, and I am also the reason at least one girl my cousin did not have to lie on that paper bed and stare at that ceiling and wonder if everything about her would be boiled down to a single word on a sheet of paper. Does that make me a hero? No, I don't feel like one. I feel divided. Half of me is glad, viciously glad. The part of me that still wakes up some nights with my heart racing, the sound of a closing door echoing in my ears. That version of me is grateful that I did something, anything, instead of just swallowing it forever. The other half of me feels guilty. Guilty that I didn't speak up sooner. Guilty that I did it anonymously, like a coward. Guilty that my parents are paying social consequences they don't understand the source of. Guilty that I still talk to them sometimes, that I still listen to their voices, pretend I don't know more than I do. I haven't told my therapist about the anonymous emails. Yes, I finally started seeing one. I told you from the outside, I look like I am doing well. We talk about boundaries, about trauma, about shame that doesn't belong to me but still sits on my chest like a weight. We talk about how my parents were also victims of their upbringing, their culture, their fears. We don't talk about the clinic investigation. We don't talk about the part of me that took justice into my own hands. We don't talk about how sometimes when my mother starts to complain over the phone about these modern girls on TV talking nonsense, I have to bite my tongue to stop myself from saying, one of them is me. One of them is your daughter. One of them was lying on a bed in a cold room while you waited outside for a stranger to decide if I was worthy of love. Instead, I nod along. I change the subject. I hang up and then sit on the floor in my apartment, feeling like my skin doesn't quite fit right. If you're listening to this and expecting a clean ending, I'm going to disappoint you. I didn't cut them off completely and ride into the sunset as an independent, healed woman. I also didn't go back and pretend everything was perfect and traditional and pure. The truth is messier. I exist somewhere in between. Low contact, measured visits, guarded conversations. No more sleepovers at my parents' house. No more blind trust in doctors. No more automatic yes to anything framed as for your own good. Some days I feel strong. I remember that I survived something that tried to turn me into a document, a result, a number, and I still found a way to act, even if it was from the shadows. Other days, I feel like a ghost, like the girl I used to be is haunting the woman I am now, standing at the foot of my bed asking, why didn't you protect me sooner? I don't have an answer for her. Not yet. Maybe that's why I am writing this. Maybe this is my attempt at telling that younger version of me that I am trying. That I couldn't save her from that room, but I did what I could to slam that door shut for others. So, yeah. That's my confession. My parents took me to a doctor to prove I was pure. The world looked at the result and said I was intact, acceptable, clean. But here's the truth they'll never know. The test didn't measure purity. It measured how much of myself I was going to lose before I learned to say no. And in the end, the only validation that mattered wasn't the one on a piece of paper in some file cabinet. It was the one I gave myself the day I decided their definition of love was too small for the person I was trying to become. I don't forgive them. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I did something they never did for me. I believed myself. I believed the girl who walked into that clinic and came out changed. And I believed her when she said, "This was wrong. Maybe that S not enough, but it has to start."